Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the Erewash series. Erewash is one of the 9 subdivisions of the county of Derbyshire. There are 14 civil parishes within it. Let's see which one we're in today. Okay, since the last episode in Erewash that you saw, Stanton by Dale, the clouds have come over and it started to spit with rain a little bit. It's nothing that I can't handle, but it could make walking around this one a little bit challenging in places because there's plenty of public footpaths and I'm not quite sure how they're surfaced. But we need to take them because one of them will take us past this place's largest landmark, and that's an abbey, or the ruins of an abbey. This is Dale Abbey. This Erewash episode is sponsored by Past Days, a family history blog by June Terrington. You'll find a link in the description. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. This is the unique parish of Dale Abbey, some 6 miles northeast of Derby. It's unique because I've never come to a place before quite like this. It really has to be seen to be believed. The parish and the village share the same name, although the village was formerly known as Deepdale, with 2 differing spellings. There are a ridiculous amount of landmarks for such a small place. We begin on the main street, which is simply known as the village, and in front of us here is one of its notable buildings. This is a family-owned and run tea room in the historic Friar's House, which dates from 1450. Offering locally sourced food too, it sounds like a good place to visit. Despite its incredibly small size, the village is split into 2 parts. The northwest corner of the village is named Dale, whilst the northeastern corner is separately named Dale Moor. The village contains the remains of an abbey, founded in the 12th or the 13th century, which explains why its name is Dale Abbey. We can even access the site of the abbey's remains. Dale Abbey is historically associated with the Hollingworth family, who originally came from the neighbouring village of Breadsall, where they were publicans of the Old Hall Inn. Reverend Peter John Hollingworth, Archbishop of Brisbane and the 23rd Governor-General of Australia, is a direct descendant of the Hollingworths of Dale Abbey. TVI card on the notice board, by the way. Over the road there's a Methodist chapel which opened in 1902. Methodism in this part of Derbyshire was historically something which often caused problems. A reverend by the name of Joseph Thorpe Milner suggested in his writings that the ancient villages of Dale Abbey became divided on matters of religion. Many in the village prescribed to the instructions found in the King's Book of Sports, published in 1618. For many others in the village, they were influenced by purist religious teachings. It's a good job I know what to look for these days. I just happened to glance across towards this house you can see here, and I thought this was a well. I don't think it's a well, but look what it says above it. Pinfold. Was this the village pinfold? Could well have been. Dale Abbey used to have a pub by the name of the Bluebell Inn. The building still exists, but our next stop is the current village pub, the Carpenter's Arms, which opened in 1880. The Hollingworth family had been the publicans of the Bluebell Inn, and they would later establish the Carpenter's Arms. The former Bluebell has a story to tell later. Here is the Carpenter's Arms as we reach Moor Lane, the main road through Dale Abbey. The village is a dead end, and the Bluebell Inn can be found at the other end of it. A couple more paces along Moor Lane and there's a map, which, even though it was more than a few years out of date, did a very good job still of telling us what's where. So this map, even though there's not a lot on it, it does help quite a lot in showing you where I'm about to go. So this is how small Dale Abbey is, the village is. I'm literally just here, and all I've done so far is walk up to the Carpenter's Arms to where I am there. You are here, okay? Now, along here, there's a footpath which runs sort of in a diagonal fashion past the Abbey, which is where this number 1 is, and then it comes out at the bottom of the village close to the church, which is somewhere here. And then there are a few more footpaths which lead down here to the Hermitage, and down there is where I'm heading. There's a nice circular loop there which will bring us back into the village, and then I shall end there where the car is. And that's effectively all I'm doing for the main walk. Now, I will mention that there are other things in Dale Abbey Parish. For a start, we've got a school which is here, which I might actually pass on the way to the footpath. There's a burial ground up there, which when I drove in I thought that was another church, because there's a thing outside that says All Saints Church. I think it was just referring to the fact it's a burial ground. The church is down there. And then all of this is part of Dale Abbey Parish, as is up here we've got Boldocks Mill and number 8, which is the Cat and Fiddle Mill. Now, when I end this video, I'll be going up that road, so I should in theory drive past it, because there's something else up there that's off this map, which is where this video is going to end. And then there's also Locko Park, which is over this way off the map, and that I'm not going to, because that is it's a private estate. There are footpaths across it, but it would take me virtually all day to walk around it. That's going to get its own special section later in the video. Time you had some demographics. Ambling along Moor Lane for a short distance, there are a few newer buildings. Most of Dale Abbey is unsurprisingly a conservation area. I really didn't expect anything less here. The old red phone box here is nothing special, I'm afraid to tell you. It's just an empty shell with no phone, no book exchange, and no defib machine. This building, though, makes up for it. That school marked on the map is the former Gateway Christian School, which is currently being renovated with the addition of a glass porch. This area next to it is Dale Abbey's recreational area. As much as I was tempted by the adventure trail, I decided not to give it a go because the rain was now starting to fall. We're heading in that sort of general direction over these fields shortly, via that diagonal footpath towards the remains of Dale Abbey. Just before we do, there's a little memorial here to have a look at. This is to Reg Williamson, who must have walked these footpaths a fair few times, being a member of the Erewash Ramblers. You know, for a man who does a lot of walking, you'd have thought Styles would have been kind of bread and butter to me, but I just absolutely hate them. Gates are much better. They really are. Oh, right, we're on this footpath, and the remains of the Abbey are within sight. The Augustinian canons moved to Dale Abbey in 1162 from their previous home at Calke Abbey. Later groups of Premonstratensian canons were linked to both Welbeck and Tupholme. From around the year 1199, the abbey became well established enough to survive for the next 340 years. It provided priests at Ilkeston, Heanor, Kirk Hallam and Stanton by Dale. The abbey owned around 24,000 acres of land, including much of Stanton by Dale, which we discussed last week. After the dissolution of the monasteries, it was abandoned. The remains comprise a 40-foot-high chancel window. Excavations have shown the church to have possessed transepts 100 feet in length, a crossing tower, a cloister 85 feet square, and a nave of unknown length. Some of the remains of the building can be found in houses around the village. It's thought that the tenor bell at Derby Cathedral originally belonged to Dale Abbey. Dale Abbey is recorded as the site of the wedding of Allan a Dale, the third of the stories of Robin Hood. And speaking of religious sites, believe it or not, that's a church in front of us. So we're here at the church, which is that building there. We're going to talk about that in a moment. I need to draw your attention to this sign first, though. This is a private driveway, but as you can see, walkers and riders are welcome, but please respect that you are on a residential property. So as such, I won't be going into this churchyard. I'll just walk up the path, get a few shots of it, and then we'll go around to the Hermitage. All Saints at just 26 by 25 feet is one of the smallest in the country. It shares a roof with an adjoining farmhouse, Verger's Farm, which may have been used as an infirmary for the abbey. For some time before 1820, this was a pub. Believe it or not, this was the Bluebell Inn. The bar was used as a vestry with a door into the aisle, and it was rebuilt in 1883. There was a door in the wall leading from the gallery into the house, through which worshippers were accustomed to steal to refresh themselves. Behind the church is an area of woodland. This is Hermit's Wood, and we're about to find something called the Hermitage. This is the part of the walk where the rain came into play. As we journey deeper into the wood, we get a view of a paddock which presumably belongs to Verger's Farm. There are gates which link the yard to the wood, but of course they're private. There are numerous signs which tell you to keep to the footpath, which I duly did. It's not long before we find some more information about Hermit's Wood. So of course we're heading for the Hermitage, but the wood itself is quite interesting. There's a nice little information board here. Hermit's Wood is probably a fragment of the original forest cover of Derbyshire. It's basically a dry, acid, mixed deciduous woodland on a steep sandstone scarp slope. The Hermitage is well signposted, and to be honest, it kind of needs to be. You can so easily get lost in these woods. From this direction, it's an uphill climb using these steps. You can park on a road called Woodpecker Hill between Dale Abbey and Stanton by Dale to reach this from the other direction, but I don't recommend that, and you'll soon see why. The Hermitage, or alternatively the Hermit's Cave, can be found carved out of this sandstone cliff by a 12th century Derby baker who wished to live a life as a recluse. It's well preserved, measuring 6 yards by 3, with a doorway, 2 windows, a peephole, and a niche for a light. Unlike the last cave we saw, bonus points if you remember that one, we can actually go inside this one. The footpath continues up the sandstone cliff, and this is the way we're going. It's much easier with a steep slope and a greasy surface thanks to the rain to go uphill than it is downhill. Okay, so I'm actually going to go back via a different path because it makes a nice circular route around the Hermitage, but also for another reason. That is extremely steep. Going up is very, very difficult. I imagine going down is just as hard. And now I'm at the top. Beware, if you try this, there are no handrails. This is why I don't recommend walking the other way. The steps I've just climbed up are ridiculously steep and there are no safety features. At one point, I almost crawled up them. On your screen now is a graph from the analytics section of Strava, the app I use to show you my walking route, which shows how quickly the elevation changed. Of course, what goes up must come down. Using the top path, you can rejoin the lower path here, but even this is tough going. The Hermitage is a wonderful landmark, but you need to be prepared. As footpaths go, I definitely don't recommend that one, especially not if you're someone who has mobility issues, because that is just, it was virtually impossible for me. I know I'm carrying a camera, but trust me, that's one of the hardest paths I've ever walked on, and this rain hasn't helped. It seems to have gone now though, which is a good thing. Anyway, time for me to move on to my next part of Dale Abbey Parish, and we need to talk about Locko Park now, which is in the west of the boundaries. That's getting its own special section, as I mentioned earlier, and it's coming your way right about now. Locko Park is a privately owned 18th century country house and associated parkland in between the villages of Stanley and Ockbrook, yet it falls within Dale Abbey's boundaries. That explains the rather odd shape and the extensive size of the parish. The estate was acquired by William Gilbert from William Byrd in 1563. The oldest part of the house is the chapel of 1669. The main south-facing block of the present house was built in 1725 out of locally sourced sandstone for MP Robert Fern. The current house was built on or close to the site of a hospital of the Order of St. Lazarus of Jerusalem, which was in existence at least as far back as 1296. The order was dedicated to the care of lepers, and the name Locko derives from the old French word for rags, locks, in reference to the strips of lint that were applied to sores. William Erms, who was responsible for the gardens of Calke Abbey and Kedleston Hall, landscaped the park, including the creation of the 16-acre lake. The house is currently in the ownership of the Drury Lowe family, and it's currently the residence of Lucy Palmer, the eldest daughter of Captain Patrick Drury Lowe. Several members of the Drury Lowe family have served as High Sheriff of Derbyshire. For some reason, Dale Abbey's boundaries include this western area of Kirk Hallam, one of several Hallams in the locality, including West Hallam, Little Hallam, and the Hallam Fields area of Ilkeston. As a result of that, the boundaries also include that school, St John Houghton Catholic Voluntary Academy, originally established as a voluntary aided school in 1965. Kirk Hallam is otherwise an unparished area of Erewash Borough. The name Hallam appears in the Domesday Book, and this may refer to West Hallam, Kirk Hallam, or maybe even both. Originally small and agricultural, Kirk Hallam's population expanded dramatically in the 50s and 60s when large housing developments were carried out. Local employer Stanton and Staveley, the company which ran Stanton Ironworks, were partially responsible for that. There was also a mix of public and private housing built in the 1960s and the 1970s. That's the area we're in now. It's known locally as the Godfrey Drive area. Kirk Hallam's two large developments form a rough oval shape either side of the main road from Ilkeston to Derby. After the dissolution of Dale Abbey in 1539, the right to appoint vicars in Kirk Hallam eventually passed to the Newdigate family. Keep that name in mind for next week. With this section of Kirk Hallam falling within Dale Abbey, and with how small the main village is, it seems completely plausible that most of the parish's population actually live here. We're now on Ladywood Road, returning from Kirk Hallam in order to get to Cat and Fiddle Lane. Our next destination is the Windmill we spoke about back at the map in the village. Called Boldocks Mill on that map, it's also known as the Cat and Fiddle Mill, and it's a post mill with a small roundhouse and covered platform at the top of its ladder. It was incredibly hard to park for, so this is the best I could do. Now I can't park here for long because there's really nowhere to park, so I've basically just had to stop right outside it and show you it from here. Can't go any further than this because obviously it's a private drive, but there is the mill, and it's still got all its sails. We don't see them very often, do we? Fantastic. Okay, I've got one last thing to talk about here in the parish of Dale Abbey, and it's to do with that building that's behind me. But first, you guys need a picture bit, and here it comes right now. Dale Abbey has a strange area to the north which seemingly would make more sense belonging to the neighbouring parish of Stanley and Stanley Common. Where we are here is a road named Station Road because there used to be a railway line here and a station too. This area was once the site of Stanley Colliery. It was known as Stanley Colliery, Derbyshire, to avoid confusion with another pit in Durham. It was closed in 1961 after 58 years of production. It employed a high of 596 people in 1949, and it was a small colliery. In terms of output, it reached 287,383 tonnes in 1956. This was the last mine in the district to close. The miners who worked here were then transferred to other pits, and it was demolished in 1963. Bricks from the chimney and surface buildings were tipped down one of the mine shafts, and the top was filled in with shale. And there you go, that's been the parish of Dale Abbey, one of the biggest, in fact the biggest in Erewash in terms of area. Now next week we'll be going to one that's certainly not the biggest in terms of area, but it's one of the biggest in terms of population. You'll just have to wait till next week to see what that is. But for now, I've been Andy, I've been the Village Idiot, and I hope you've enjoyed Dale Abbey. I'm out.